All right, here we go. This is, again, very weird, but I think I will do one file rather than separate files for each chapter. So we're going to start with chapter 8, then do 9, 10, 11, skip 12, of course, and 13 and 14. I am going off of the review guide, so it will be in chronological order. Of course, the questions for the exam are based on this review guide, along with your readings, along with the lectures and the PowerPoints that follow in class. Also remember that this is basic ground level information, which means that you probably need to spend a little bit more time working on this than just the general information that I will be reviewing for each chapter. So with that said, Chapter 8 for Marketing 351 Viterbo University Review. What is market segmentation? Market segmentation is a verb, which means it's a process, it's an action, and what does it do? It takes a large market and breaks it up into several smaller segments or chunks. This is not what target marketing is. Target marketing comes out of the process of market segmentation, but market segmentation simply is the act of taking a large general market and breaking it up into several different chunks. In order for one to break up a market, it needs to meet some criteria. That criteria would be it needs to be large enough, it needs to be identifiable, it needs to be measurable, it needs to be responsive to different messages, and it needs to be accessible. And if all of those criteria are met, then typically one would want to break up a market or segment a market. In the process of segmenting a market or breaking it up into several different identifiable chunks or segments, we use what's referred to as bases. There are 5 bases of segmentation. Geographic, which is obviously by geography. So you could do it by neighborhood, by city, by zip code, by state, by region, by country, and then hemispheres, the world, obviously. Geographic is easy. It's inexpensive, so it's typically done. Then the next easiest would be demographic segmentation. So we would break up a market based on the many different demographic factors, such as gender, race, ethnicity, religion, socioeconomic status, home ownership, marital status of being married or not, children, if you own cars, educational status. All of those would be demographic indicators. And along with demographics and geographics, those are probably the 2 that are most often used by businesses, again, because it's easy and it's relatively free from secondary data sources. The other segmentation bases that you can break up a market on would be psychographics, which actually is the best. It's the richest of the data because it really tells what makes individuals tick, what makes them buy. It's more qualitative rather than quantitative data, which demographic and geographic are. Psychographic looks at your values, your attitudes, your lifestyles, and that information can be bought or certainly can be found out through focus groups. A fourth would be behavioristic. What is the behavioral reason why you're making the purchase? We do buy for 2 reasons mainly. Functional, which is utilitarian, and psychological, which is hedonic. Depends on the product or service, of course, but generally we buy usually for more psychological or hedonic than functional or utilitarian purposes, but nonetheless knowing why people buy is important. And the last of the 5, so far we have psychographics, geographics, demographics, behavioristic, and the 5th would be usage rate, or we could segment a market based on individuals' buying patterns. Are they light, heavy, or moderate users? And those could be 3 different groups. So you certainly could take all of those and break them up into different groups. So let's say, as an example, we wanted to break up the lacrosse market for pizza. We could, do it by geographics, which is lacrosse. We could do it by demographics, looking at males and females, different age groups, different income groups, different educational groups. We could do it by usage rate, light users over medium users. We could do it by behavioristic. Are they doing it for health reasons, or are they doing it because they just want a pile of pizza at 3 in the morning? And we could break it up, and let's say we found out there were 15 different definable, measurable, accessible groups of or segments of pizza eaters. And we looked at our business, and we said, okay, our business identifies with segment 1, 6, 14, and 16. We would take those 4 segments and we'd mash them together. And putting those together, those segments together, is what's referred to as aggregating. Aggregating is the combination of several segments into one definable now target market. So if we look at segmentation, we use the bases. Out of the bases come segments. We take segments that work for our business. We put them together through aggregation, which is not in the text. We just talked about it. We aggregate it. We put it together. That is a target market. Once we have a target market, typically our business has some knowledge amongst our target market potential people, not all, but potential people that might buy our brand, and what they think about us. The words that they would say and associate us with is referred to as positioning, and also how we want to be referred to is positioning. So it's how we want to be positioned and how we are positioned. Typically there's a disconnect, and of course it's marketing's job to create, communicate, and deliver a message of value on a positive position rather than a negative position. And the last piece, of course, for Chapter 8 would be if you find out that the position of your product or service in the marketplace or the target market is not positive, typically you're going to have to do something called a repositioning. In class, I believe I gave the example of Target, how they were perceived as being dirty, cheap, and unattractive, to reposition themselves as a relatively moderate style retail store, much like perhaps Kohl's. So that's Chapter 8. Chapter 9 is on research and the importance of research. Of course, we know that we do market research really at the beginning, during, and at the end and after of any marketing activity. So the marketing plan, the roadmap, really is all research born. There's 2 types of research that we could do. There is quantitative research, which is under the research tradition of positivism. Positivism being there's only one worldview, there's only one answer, and that answer is based on statistical fact found through, in marketing, of course, surveys, looking at a larger population size, trying to generalize the sample into a larger demographic or a larger population size. And it typically is done to find out patterns that we have or that are there that we don't know about that we can leverage in marketing. Quantitative research is the, qualitative research is the other research tradition, typically under the research tradition of social constructivist. Social constructivism looks at the world in that there are many facts because there's many views and perspectives. We look at themes, not generalizations in qualitative research, and typically that's born out of research focus groups, small sample sizes looking for the meaning. So if we would attach some of our bases of segmentation, behavioristic and psychographics would be qualitative, and usage rate, demographics, and geographics would be quantitative. There is a stepping process to the to how you would go about designing research and implementing research, and you need to be familiar with all of those steps. Know that marketing research comes in really 2 forms besides quantitative and qualitative. There's primary research, which is research done for the first time. So you would actually develop and go and find your own survey or conduct your own survey or your own focus group, or you can buy secondary research that someone else has done for the first time, or get it online like the census.gov for free. And that would be secondary research. Of course, research is important to marketing because it helps drive all our decisions. We don't want to make decisions off of I think so's. We want to make decisions based on I know so's, or at least I'm pretty damn sure. So the purpose of marketing research is to guide in our decisions and to evaluate our decisions, and then to change our decisions if going forward if we have to based on the research. Chapter 10, now we're moving on to one of the first of the 4 P's in the marketing mix. Of course, the marketing mix, price, product, promotion, place, is the toolbox that we use in marketing to create, communicate, and deliver a message of value. The place, or excuse me, the product P is one that chapter 10 and 11 focus on, and 13 and 14 will focus on place. So let's take a look at product first. There are a number of different types of consumer products out there, from convenience to everyday use to occasional luxury use. You just need to be familiar with the fact that you can categorize consumer products into different labels. We know that a product is actually not just a product, but we define a product as a product and or a service, and it's not just what it does, like a haircut, law advice, a pack of gum, or a car, but it's also the things that go into it, such as service, and its brand is also part of the actual product, and it can be negative and or positive. Products can typically be put into different categories as well. So we have a product item, which is a single product. So let's say let's say gum. We have one spearmint gum, and then if we add more product items, spearmint, strawberry, mango, black licorice, gross. Another one, mustard gum. I don't know why I thought of that. All of those individual items are referred to as the product line, and if a business would happen to have several product items or lines that are different, like gum, ketchup, mustard, and laundry detergent, that would be their product mix for that business. Most companies, however, typically have a product line and or a product item only. It's not rare, but only larger businesses can actually carry a product mix. Branding, I see position is next in order, but I talked about that already in Chapter 8. But repositioning also can happen when your product item, product line, or product mix gets old, gets stale. We know that we have something called the product life cycle that you need to be familiar with. That's in Chapter 11. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But when we're in the decline stage, we might have to reposition ourselves and look at our business model in a little different way. Much like Netflix did, they repositioned themselves from mailing to video that you would download to on demand, streaming live. So we also need to recognize that under Chapter 10 is the big topic, though we're just sketching it real at the surface level here, is branding. Branding is the symbols, the words, the colors that we use to associate a product or service. So when we see it or hear it, we automatically know what it does, where it does it, when it does it, how it does it. And of course, to be branded, it takes a significant investment and repetitive investment in marketing to create and communicate that and deliver that message of value. And then finally, often part of a brand is its packaging. Packaging, of course, has more than a branding function. It serves as a carrying function, a protective function, a storing function, and also, obviously, a marketing function. Chapter 11, continuing with the products, there is a developmental process on how we get, it's a funnel on how we get a new, this would be under new product development process. There is a process, a funneling process where we start with ideas and we actually get a new product to market. It's a stepping process where at each level of that funnel, the marble could be kicked out because it doesn't work or it doesn't meet the next criteria. And you need to be familiar with that funneling process. It's likely that you'll be asked to actually draw that funnel with each step. Also, there are two graphs that you're going to have to probably draw for sure. The one is the diffusion of innovation, how a new product is diffused into the marketplace with the different labels from the early adopters to the innovators, all the way to the laggards, which I am for sure in technology, and the reason why each would go into it, into not the reason, but the strategy that might we use in marketing relative to each of those product life cycle, or excuse me, of those diffusion of innovation stages. The product life, and recognize too, the diffusion of innovation is for a new product, but that new product for laggards actually is an old product. It could be, 3 or 4 years old. I have yet to get a smartphone. I'm a laggard. I'm waiting for the price of the service and the cost of the phone to go down even more. Though it's not a new product, it's a new product to me. So in the diffusion of innovation, I have yet to diffuse into that new innovation, though the innovation is 3, 4, maybe even 5 years old. And some of you probably were the first ones to get into it, and you would be the innovators. And then, of course, we could line that up with profitability, knowing that it takes, and also the product life cycle, that it takes time for organizations to make money, and that profitability also starts to lag after a certain point in time. And that product life cycle, you also have to know and be able to label and graph the X and the Y axis, the sales relative to time, and show the different stages of the product life cycle, from the introduction, expansion, maturity, decline, and possible exit. You have to also be able to do that. Chapters 13 and 14 finally are on the next P in the marketing mix, which would be place. Often the most misunderstood of the 4 Ps and how it relates to creating, communicating, delivering a message of value. Probably the biggest general comment I'll make, and then I'll go over each. Wow, I'm bald. I'll go over each one of those points there. Is the biggest point is that if we become more efficient in how we get our product to market, and how we source our product, and how we inventory our product, the more we will save. So our costs will be reduced. That cost can either be passed on to the consumer in a lower price, or it can be passed on to us in a higher margin. Either way, it's creating value, and you have to understand that the place is really about value relative to price. So there are basically 3, depending on how you measure it, 4 channels or intermediaries. You have where are we? Let's go on this side. You have the manufacturer, then you have typically a wholesaler, then you have probably a broker or a trader, then you have a retailer, then you have the ultimate consumer. At each one of those stages, those intermediary stages are channels of marketing. So marketing channels and intermediaries are the same. At each one of those stages, value is added, and that value in Porter's model can be in different forms. You have to be familiar with Porter's model of the value-added chain, and why we would use intermediaries, mostly because of contact efficiency and also specialization. Those are the 2 main reasons why we would do those types of things in terms of using intermediaries in the different channels. So there's a number of advantages that you need to be aware of. Supply chain and logistics management is typically how we source our product, where we get our product from, and how we manage it, the to and the from of the supplies that either we use to run our organization, and or which makes us more efficient, or the actual product or service. And the software often now that is used. I have down here GIT. I don't think I talked about that in class. That's in reference to just-in-time inventory. Just-in-time inventory was a process that was started, kind of invented by the Japanese in the auto industry in the 80s. And they learned how to pretty much match inventory to when demand was happening. So you didn't have something sitting there for months, which is a carrying cost, of course. You had it ready to go when the demand was there. So supply met demand almost at the same time, which reduced our inventory cost. And again, we could pass that along to the consumers. That's why the Japanese won in the car industry for a long time, until we figured out that system with our factories. So just-in-time inventory is in reference to inventory control. I noticed there that there is channel conflict on there, and I'm not quite sure if I mentioned that much either in class. However, it certainly is in the text. Channel conflict is when there is almost a competition between the channels, and there's a lack of communication between, let's say, you and your wholesaler, and the wholesaler is supposed to get your item to the retailer, and they're either bad at it, or they're slow, or they're inefficient. So who you use in your channel actually affects you upstream or downstream in that intermediary loop. And then finally, trends in supply chain management. There are several trends now, which would be software, technology, tracking, and outsourcing is a big part of inventory control, where you're actually having someone else do it because that's not what your core business model is. So I went through most of the items, if not all of the items here in a broad sense, but it gives you some idea of the questions that I'm going to be asking and what I'm kind of looking for in answers. Of course, your job is to dig a little bit deeper into each one of these with your notes and the text readings, but the questions will be based off of what I just talked about, which is the review guide. I'll check my email a couple times tonight, and then I'll be in my office probably tomorrow at 7 if you have any questions before the exam. Have fun and good luck.